We'll lay them down in the bed and then that's all right. We'll put some stuff in like this. Now that we've got the tank verified that it's good to go, next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and pick up your BCD and we're gonna attach the BCD to the tank. One thing to note real quick is these caps that are on your scuba tank. The reason the cap is on there, two reasons. One, to protect the valve so it doesn't get damaged, and two, that tells you this tank is full. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna remove the cap. Just the rubber part slides up and off, and then that just hangs down like this. Next thing you're gonna wanna do when you take that off, you're gonna visually inspect to make sure there's a gasket or an O-ring in there. Some are brown, some are black. You can see that right here. You wanna make sure that the air nozzle is facing towards the back of your head. So a good, easy way to remember is air to hair. Now, obviously I don't have any hair, but for most people that do, just remember air goes to hair, so you make sure to line it up right. How this works is, you wanna take it, make sure your strap is open, and you just slide it onto the tank, like so. This particular, you guys have the exact same BCD as I do. I bought this so that I could match the student to make it easier. This little thing right here goes over the valve, and you slide it down, and what you wanna do is make sure that this part is centered with your valve opening. And then you lower it down to where you have approximately no more, some people it's like 3 fingers, some people it's a full hand, but you wanna make sure that you're from this part to here. You don't wanna go too low because then your back of your head will keep hitting your yoke, your first stage of your regulator. It's easier to do this when you're standing up because when you're getting ready to fasten it, you can use your knees and kind of hug it, and you can work it like I am right here, like this. Making sure this is centered how you like it. Undo this out of here, kind of pull this tight. You can feel that snug like that. Once you know that it's pretty snug, then stick this back through that last loop. And now if you hold here, it gives you more leverage to just bring that around and close it. And then take the extra and kind of tuck it underneath and make sure the Velcro's attached. Grab your BCD by the shoulder straps, pick it up and shake it a couple times and make sure that it's snug. Go ahead and pull out your regulators. Regulator goes on next. What you're gonna wanna do is remember that your air sources are always on your right-hand side, as you can see. So I always check that first, make sure it's right. Now unscrew the yoke set screw here and remove the dust cap, which is this little black piece that's right there covering your inlet hole for the air. And then once you get that open enough, you want to drop that on there till the inlet hole kind of seats onto your gasket, and then tighten the back set screw finger tight. That's all it needs to be. You just go like that and that's it. You don't want to over tighten that, that'll wear out your parts. And the reason it doesn't have to be that tight is when you put pressure to it, that air is going to seal that up and it's going to stay totally sealed. Now that we've got the BCD on there, you've got this finger tight, you've got this connected, you're gonna charge the system. Take your console with your air pressure gauge, face it away from you. The reason for this is if there's a crack that you don't happen to see and you put pressure to it and you're like this, could blow up and you get glass or plastic in your face. So the rule of thumb is when you charge your system, face that away from you or make sure it's sitting away from you. And when you turn on your tank, this valve here, it's just like anything else, lefty-loosey turns it on. The first crank or so goes slow so you're not just, once the system gets charged, if you listen, now you can go as fast as you want, all the way open. And when you get it all the way open, go about a quarter turn back. We're gonna check to make sure our air is good. Notice you'll have 2 sources of air. You got your primary, yellow one is your alternate, or otherwise known as your octopus. What you're gonna do first is you take your primary, Barely push the purge, and I want you to smell the air. Make sure there's no weird, funky smells going on. Now you're gonna take it, go ahead and put it in your mouth, blow out first, that purges it, and then take a couple breaths. You don't have to smell the second one because it's the same air, so we know it's good, but you do wanna put this in your mouth, take a couple breaths off your octopus to make sure that it works. These also have this little pocket, and this is actually more streamlined. I prefer this better. So that just sticks right in there. See how more streamlined that is? Yeah. Now if your buddy needs air, he knows it's right there, or he or she knows that your air source is right there. They can just come up, grab it. It should pull right out of there, and then breathe. Our air's good or breathable. Now we're gonna test our BCD to make sure it's all good. So if you grab your LPI, low pressure inflator hose, you got a gray button right here. Push that, and I want you to go ahead and fill your BCD all the way up. And when it gets overfilled, you'll hear it, psh, that's an overfill valve to keep it from popping. Now you want to check all your dump valves to make sure they work. This is the one you're gonna mainly be using during this course. Just press that a couple times, make sure you hear air coming out. Then you also have one right here, this cord on your right shoulder. The valve is actually right here, pull that. That works. Then you've also got butt dumps, we call them. You got one lower here. And then lastly, not least, this is your emergency dump. Don't get in the habit of using this. It wears them out and it dumps air way faster than the others. And what it is if you just grab your LPI hose and you pull straight forward on it, you hear that? So the reason that's like that is, so let's say for some reason you're underwater and you're going into an uncontrolled ascent where the air's expanding and it's pulling you fast, you can just grab that and pull out, and that'll dump the air real fast. So that's for emergency use only. Don't ever get in the habit of using that as your main source of dumping air. People that do that, they wear this out, and then you have to replace the whole hose. The reason these are designed in there is so that, let's say your left hand somehow is, you can't use it, or maybe you're holding something and you need to dump air. Now you can do it with your right hand here. The butt dump is so that if you're positioned facing down, being pulled up, instead of having to turn your body clear like this to dump this way, you can just reach back and pull that. The reason I don't get used to using any of this stuff, most of the diving that we're gonna be doing in the cold water, you're gonna have gloves on. It's really hard to feel these. Yeah. And especially the butt dump, because you can't see it. Whereas this one, you're gonna memorize real quick exactly where this is at. So if you're like this and you're getting pulled up, and you need to dump air, you simply just pivot your body, dump, and go back to this, okay? So just get used to doing that during this class. Once you get done and you're starting to dive, then you can start playing around with different methods, but don't overwhelm yourself. Get used to using the main source of dumping air. We'll go over the weights when we go in the water. So you're good, and you can set that down. Always get in the habit of setting it on the tank first, because you don't want the weight of the tank and everything going on top of your BCD and run the risk of it damaging. You know, a lot of these parts are made out of plastic. You don't want to break something. So always get in the habit of putting it tank first. Everything else goes on top of it, okay? Now, we're gonna go over disassembly. Turn your air off, righty-tighty, all the way. Air's off. Now you've got to purge out the air that's in your system. So it doesn't matter, you can take the secondary or your primary, dump all the air. Once that's dumped, go ahead and disconnect your LPI hose. You got it purged, LPI disconnected, okay? Now, go ahead and this should open real easy. Just remember this, if you start cranking on your set screw for your yoke valve and you notice that it's hard, most of the time the reason for that is because you forgot to purge the air out of your system. If you fight it and it's fine to get it, it's gonna sound like a 22 caliber rifle going off in your hand. Because you know what I'm saying, it's a pressurized unit now, boom. So just remember that if you ever fight, and then purge your system. So that comes out, disconnected, that's separate. Go ahead and roll that up. Take the dust cap, put it back over the inlet port, and tighten your set screw down on it just snug enough to hold it in place. You don't have to crank it down. And then you can roll that up, set that aside. Next thing, undo your BCD clip, and it should just lift right off. Once you get that disconnected, take your tank, set it down, take your thing, and what I like to do is take my regulator, set it on the BCD. That way, if you're putting it into a mesh bag, you kind of roll it up, kind of like what I like to call a scuba burrito, and that keeps it protected.